Tracy, I'm just gonna close my video and audio for a moment as I just run through this one more time.
You bet.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Dwayne.
Hello all.
Hi, Chris.
I'm going to try leaving my video on until it's time for me to speak. Of course, and again, I might need to change the lighting to do that.
The host has just promoted me to a panelist. Whew, that's good. For a minute there, I thought I was in the wrong meeting. Oh my goodness. How's everybody?
Got you covered, Claude.
Got you covered. Thank you. Awesome. So the numbers we see, the participants, they're in a separate room waiting to be invited.
Yeah, they can see us and hear us most likely at this point, so they can hear all this chitter chatter, but that's okay.
Good.
We're just waiting for people to sign on. You can see there's about 49 people already. And
somebody said, yep, we can hear you.
And we're expecting almost 700.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Now my camera is off. Okay, I can fix that. There we are. All right. Is that good? It's all good, eh?
All good.
Awesome. All right.
I just came from a Polytechnics briefing on federal supports for students. It was quite fascinating, quite informative, and Sarah's going to be sending me all kinds of links and documentation and support. I'll be sure to share that with everybody when the time comes.
Good, thank you. Yeah, we did receive some information from Colleges Ontario as well through Rob Savage. I believe I shared that with everyone yesterday. So more information will filter as the interpretations come forward. So that's good. Good news for our students.
Well, there's a number of supports that I learned about that I wasn't aware of before. For example, a volunteer service work of up to $5,000 in the fall. That's in addition. Now, there's some really nice financial supports that are going to be available for students.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand. That's you keep hearing that, right? Even after the announcement, people are still saying, "Yeah, more could be done." It's trying to be measured in the approach.
I have my little helper in the background here.
Do you?
Hey, don't do that. This is going to be awesome.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
We just need some live background music, you know, to just to chill while we're waiting for things to start.
I think we should all Vogue.
Oh my goodness.
I think that's Claude's way of saying maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, I know. Okay, until we hit the record button. Oh.
There we go.
Numbers are really climbing up now. Watching the 416 and climbing.
We're all crossing our fingers when we hit that magic 500 number.
I know.
Well, Senor Presidente, it is 2 p.m. and we'll just wait for your word to begin.
Yeah, I think, Tracy, we have well past 500 that who have registered, so we'll probably want to give it a minute or two.
Sure.
People may be having difficulty signing in, so we'll let the numbers climb up to at least past 500, and then we'll get started.
I'm getting text messages from folks that says, yep, we need music.
Yeah.
Cueing Laura, and you're on.
There you go.
You wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want me singing.
No.
We would see the numbers plummet quickly as people would jump off the call.
I don't know. I think we could end the town hall with a
Yay,
Winter
over
poll.
500.
Yeah, still climbing very quickly here.
Oh, I like that. Someone say no Canada.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no, I'm not singing that anthem. No, no. only if we all sing together.
Oh,
I
it's
think I
like
opened up a can of worms here.
Cindy Chapman wants the Jeopardy tune. There you go. So that's an easy one to do.
You do that one all the time, Claude.
I know. You know, when there's a pause and either someone is trying to share a document and everybody's sweating for that person, hoping that they'll get it. And in my mind, it's always doom 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 doom. Right? You can't end up. But yeah,
I
playing
know
that
you couldn't
too.
bring that up without Claude actually singing it here.
I know. There we go. There's suggestions to write our own AC song. My goodness.
And is our closed caption link working?
Believe it is. Yeah.
Okay.
We've got Sophia and the events team on it all in the background, so not to worry.
Okay, we're at about 5:20 and it's stayed there for a little while. So Ron, let's get started.
All right, let me just answer this last one here. Okay, so welcome everybody, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of everybody's. As normal, I will be the moderator for this afternoon's town hall. And I'll walk folks through the agenda. We'll talk about some ground rules. We'll hear a message from Claude. We'll go through some presentations and then a number of questions. But before we do that, just a couple of things. Number one, actually all of you that are not on the panelist group does not have audio, nor do you have video. I wanted to start with saying that because I'm getting quite a few text messages about that. So we cannot see or hear you unless you are on the panel. So for those of you who didn't comb your hair, do not worry, we cannot see you. The second thing that I would say is that while we are all over the province, we do recognize that the college at least exists on traditional unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and we thank them for allowing us to continue to exist on their territory. Before I go into the welcome and some ground rules, though, I'd like to share a fairly short traditional story that only came to me, that I was only reminded of semi-recently. Although when I heard the story, I felt like either I heard it when I was very young or even some recognition as deep as blood memory. I myself am Turtle Clan of the Oneida Nation. In the community that I come from, we have 3 clans. And the way that we used to live, each clan would live within their longhouse. And so as a Turtle Clan member, I would have lived in a longhouse with aunties and uncles and cousins and grandparents and parents in a fairly large structure. Some people say about 45 feet wide by 750 feet long. And a long time ago, they say that we had very different living circumstances. They say that at the first round of creation, there was no sickness, there was no need to eat, there was no death, and it was a land of happy spirits. The story says that there were 3 separate times where incidents took place that really shook our minds, that really gave us reason to consider how we lived our lives in relationship to each other, but also to the natural world. At one point, they say that our people became very complacent. They forgot about the traditional teachings. They forgot to give thanks, and they forgot about their connection to all our relations and to the Creator. In one particular winter, they say that it got really bad. It got really snowy, and you have to imagine these longhouses, were fairly tall. I can't tell you exactly how tall. I'd think perhaps 25, 35 feet tall. And all these people lived together. And what I was told is that one particular winter, it got really, really bad, where the snow was right up to the top of the longhouse. And all the community members were inside their longhouses, and they were scared. They were scared because the snow wasn't stopping. The wind was rushing very hard. The temperatures were really cold. And they were in there for so long that food and water became scarce. And the way the structures were built, there were family fires that would exist in the longhouses with smoke holes on top. And so there wasn't a lot of ventilation. And as the snow came and as the winds came and the temperature kept dropping and the food and water got scarce, you can imagine these kids and their parents and their aunties and their uncles and all their extended family very nervous, very scared about how life would continue, about how they would feed each other, how they would get the water they needed to survive, how they would watch over and protect their family. Well, the story goes that this kept going on this way for quite some time. And the community at that time was really scared that they were going to die, that they weren't going to make it through this really horrific time. Well, apparently at one point, it seemed that the snow cleared, and just at the top of the longhouse, there was some sun that made it through. And in my mind, I see these families nervous and scared, malnourished and thirsty, and very smoky in there. And in my mind, I see a ray of sunshine coming through the top of this longhouse. And apparently what they did, as the story goes, is that they kind of formed one of those like human pyramids where they lay down and people could crawl on each other's back to climb high. And they were able to peek outside the longhouse. And they were able to understand that the storm had went away, that great scary storm had stopped its really intense storm. And so they designated these 2 young men, and some people say warriors, but you have to understand that warriors don't necessarily mean fighters. They can be the people who care for the community. They designated these 2 young warriors to leave the longhouse and go look to see what the world looked like now. And so these 2 young men, very malnourished, very thirsty, very cold, took it upon themselves to go out into this new world and see what they could see. And the snow was so deep and so tall, and they got very scared because there was no food, there was nothing to see. The way they even oriented themselves in this new world was quite a bit nerve-wracking. And I guess they decided to go out and look a little ways into the woods. And at one point they were just about to give up, and they had noticed that there was something very strange going on deeper in the forest. I guess the snow or the wind or something had happened where it broke a very big tree, and maybe it toppled over or it cracked right off. But they noticed that there were all these animals that were gathered at the bottom. And what they had noticed was that when that tree cracked, the water that was inside that tree, what we now know as maple syrup, had leaked out from the side of that tree and ran down the tree and formed an ice bowl on the bottom of that trunk. And all these animals were down there drinking from that water. There were animals there that were normally predators that maybe didn't get along normally. And they had put all that aside to drink from this water that the Creator had put and provided for them. And it was at that time that those men decided to go and drink from that water themselves, and I guess carry what they could back to the longhouse. and it got our people really excited. They took it as a message to know that there was still a way to be, that there was still a way to survive, and that perhaps in this new world, that we would have to come together in a way that maybe we hadn't come together before. They looked at our cousins in the forest and noticed that perhaps there was a way to reframe our minds, to reframe our thinking, and to decide what kind of adjustments we would have to make in order to be good people with a good mind and a good heart to build a strong fire for our community. And so that's how they say that maple syrup came to our community. And I share that story with you today. And I know some of our leadership team colleagues have heard me tell this story recently, just to say that things have happened in the past that have shook our minds. Things have happened in the past where we were scared and we didn't quite know how to move forward. But when we trusted in ourselves and we trusted in the environment and we trusted in our mother, the earth, that there was a way through that. And by coming together and using that good mind, there was a good future for everybody. And so I just frame that against some of this pandemic thing that's happening right now as we get nervous, as we get scared, and as we look for a way forward and try to pilot and explore this new way of being. And the new way of being, by the way, doesn't have to just be NEW way of being. I think there's a lot of things we can take from the new world from a KNEW perspective. And so with that teaching and that story, I'll welcome all of you to our first massive online town hall here. So with that, I'm going to move into some of the ground rules for today. Then we'll hear from our president. We'll go into the Board of Governors meeting recap, and then move our way through a number of questions, both pre-submitted and online here. As we do this, though, I'm going to ask for some of your patience, some of your good-minded support, because a lot of us are doing some of this for the first time with this magnitude, and we'll do our best to make this run as smoothly as possible. And if things don't work the best that we want, we'll put a big smile on our face and support each other. So moving on to my notes. This is the largest community gathering that we have hosted since we shifted the way we host meetings. This town hall is a kickoff of a series of online events that the events team and the AC Hub will be hosting for the Algonquin College community over the next couple months. You may have noticed the post on my AC for Kamal Minnes. The amazing thing about shifting events to an online format is that we now have access to speakers that we normally couldn't reach. Kamal was named to Oprah's Super Soul 100, and most recently, Kamal interviewed the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, during her Canadian stadium tour. Kamal has spoken at the White House and at Harvard University, and her work has been featured on NBC, the Huffington Post, and Forbes. This is an impressive young woman. You'll find the registration link on my AC, and I know I, for one, am looking forward to it. All right, so just a little bit of general information. Today, we literally have all hands on deck. And I don't know if you can see it, but we're trending near over 600 participants. A really special shout out to the AC Hub events team for all the great work they've done in getting prepared for today. If you have any technical questions or concerns, please reach out through the chat box and the events team will assist you. Speaking of technology, if something were to happen to my ability to continue moderating the town hall today, Tracy is on deck to pick up in my absence. Sorry, Tracy, if I forgot to tell you that. As you know, no, she knew. As you know, your questions are very important to us. That said, managing the question and answer process is going to need to be a little bit different, and it's also more challenging today for a variety of reasons. In order to mitigate this, we are unable to take questions after each section like we normally would do in previous town hall meetings. Instead, we have a live question and answer period later in the town hall. You will notice that we're using a webinar tool today instead of a regular Zoom meeting. As a result, you can only see the faces of the presenters. However, Webinars allow us to have access to a larger target audience, which we absolutely needed for today. Closed captioning is also available by clicking the button on the main bar. Moving on to talk about some of the questions. As most, if not all of you know, we had an opportunity for pre-submitted questions. Thank you to everyone who took time to pre-submit those questions. We have gone through them and they will be addressed to the best of our ability. If you do not see a specific question on the screen, do not worry. We've done our best to cover that question in the presentation component of today's town hall. Following that, we'll move into live questions. There will be approximately 30 minutes for live questions. All of your, this part gets really important as far as your individual interaction. All of your questions must be entered into the question and answer box only, not the chat. I will read them out loud and a member of our panelists will answer. Please note that we will try to get through all of these questions, but they will come on a first come, first serve basis. If you're watching through the live stream link on YouTube, please submit your question in the chat and Sophia, our amazing events manager, will get them to me. Now, in order for this to run as smoothly as possible, please hold off asking questions in the Q&A box until that portion begins. That is very important. I will say it again. In order for it to run smoothly, think about your questions, write them down, make a note, but please hold off inputting them into the question and answer box until that portion begins. This is absolutely necessary to help us manage the intake process. Now, if we're unable to get to all the questions, we commit to answering them post town hall, and those answers, along with the recording, will be posted to my AC. So with that, I'll turn it over to our president, Claude Brulé. Claude?
What a fantastic intro, Ron. Thank you very much. I see in the chat a lot of kudos have come your way for those excellent words, those very apropos words for the events that we're living through right now. So good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour, Kwe. Let me add my words of welcome and greetings to those of Ron. It's really, really nice to be with you this afternoon. And although I can't see you, I can literally feel your presence. And it's so great to be able to connect to a record-breaking town hall audience this afternoon. And by the way, welcome to my house. I've never had 700 people at my house, so this feels really cool to be able to do this through the technology. First, I would like to say that as we watch the nightly news and what is unfolding in Nova Scotia, I'll reiterate, and I've said this in a previous communique, that our hearts and our thoughts go out to the people of that province who not only are challenged, as we all are at this difficult time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but they've also experienced tragic and senseless acts of violence that took the lives of so many people over the weekend. It's also a reminder that closer to home, many in our college community are also experiencing challenges of their own, some related to the pandemic, as perhaps loved ones are in retirement homes or long-term care establishments that have recently experienced outbreak and are at the center of the hotspots of COVID-19 at the moment. And again, our hearts and thoughts go out to all of those affected. The events that we're living through as a community are unprecedented in the history of the college. And yet, as difficult a time as this is, it's allowed our employees to demonstrate their resiliency, their adaptability, and their generosity towards one another and towards our community. At a time when physical distancing must be exercised, our employees have found ways to stay socially and professionally connected to each other, to stay connected to our learners, and to maintain their spirit, sometimes in very innovative and creative ways, I must add. And for that, we are truly proud, grateful, and appreciative. From the very start of the pandemic, our first priority has been and remains the safety and well-being of our learners and our employees. Our second priority has been and remains to ensure continuity of the learning process and seeing to student success to the greatest extent possible during this period of provincially declared state of emergency. Now, I would like to remind everyone that this situation is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires us to be patient with ourselves and each other, to pace ourselves, and to continue to pave the way forward with good intentions, as Ron mentioned, so that we can care for one another and for our Algonquin College community. The road ahead of us and the days and weeks to come will look different from those of the past. As you will hear from our presenters today, and no doubt also hearing from leaders across our country and the world, the exit out of this pandemic and the easing of current restrictions will need to be done carefully and thoughtfully so as not to trigger a renewed wave of viral transmission. And that is why the days ahead, and as we plan for the fall term, things will look different from last fall. And as we plan for the future, we do so with the best information at our disposal at the time. I urge us to guard against analyzing past decisions with today's lens and data. The events in this pandemic are evolving very quickly, and we must remain flexible in our response and adapt as new information becomes available. We have decisions to make in the days and weeks ahead that will be tough, difficult, and it must be made to balance looking after our college community now and seeing to its sustainable future. And that's a balance we must strike. We will do so with transparency, guided by our values together. As Ron said, I also want to thank you for the questions that you sent to us in advance. And those will either be answered in the few next presentations that we have or immediately after the presentations before we go to live questions. I look forward to our exchange and I look forward to your comments and the rest of this afternoon's town hall. And with that, I will turn it back to Ron. Ron, over to you.
All right. Thank you, President Claude Brulé. Now, we're going to turn our attentions over to the Board of Governor recap, and I will ask Colin to take the floor. Colin, over to you.
Thank you, Ron, and good afternoon, everyone. The college has mounted an incredible effort in responding to this pandemic. Over the next few slides, I'll do my best to summarize some of these efforts for you. I'll be speaking in terms of the phases we are working through, just to help organize the information as best possible and respond to some of the questions that I know you may have. The college has organized its response to the pandemic in accordance with the College Emergency Management Framework. Well, here we have a slide issue already. Can we advance the slide one? There we go. This includes the 5 distinct phases that are shown at the bottom right of this slide: monitoring, response, management, recovery, and return to normal. We do know that normal is out there somewhere, even though imagining it right now might be a challenge for us. Next slide, please, Michelle. The first stage of this cycle is monitoring. In December, a new severe acute respiratory syndrome virus, later named COVID-19, was identified in China. The college began monitoring the outbreak during the 3rd week of January. Early on, various reliable sources of information were identified that would provide the data to inform our ongoing planning and response. During this period, our focus was on initiating regular monitoring and communications with the leadership team, assessing our employees and students abroad, aligning our travel policies with Global Affairs Canada, ensuring communication lines were established, and starting to take early stock of the situation and the trajectory. Next slide, please. Towards the end of February, the college mobilized its pandemic plans with consideration for 4 primary areas of initial activity. College plans are based on the colleges and universities model that emerged during the H1N1 pandemic. The infection control, infection prevention measures included both online and print campaigns to communicate information about hand washing, hand sanitizing, cough etiquette, as well as expanding our cleaning and increasing cleaning frequencies, while deploying additional hand sanitizing stations. Launching our plans put in motion various emergency planning efforts structured around known requirements. The need for ongoing risk assessment was identified, and a primary effort to prepare a financial risk assessment was led by the Strategic Enrollment Management Committee, Finance and International Education Center. Next slide, please. Communications are the cornerstone for every emergency response effort. And I have to give a huge shout out to our communications team who has done a phenomenal job with this, establishing centralized unified messaging across all of the areas of interest, from general health information and operating changes, human resources issues around pay and benefits, to academic scheduling, grading, and outcomes, has been an absolutely intense effort by our communications team that clearly reflects best-in-class efforts. Next, please. This short summary clearly does not do justice to the monumental effort across the entire college to be able to pull together the way that we have and to retool the college within a week to move to remote delivery and work from home. It has been truly amazing. Our academic development and LTS teams, working with all of our faculty, achieved a Herculean task that involved the coordination of nearly 60 workshops for over 700 participants, on top of regularly occurring drop-ins and one-on-one support sessions. Student Services moved the contact center, the Center for Accessible Learning, Counseling, Employment Services, the Student Hub, and more to remote delivery in a very short time frame, a massive exercise in coordination. Health Services is sustaining minimal in-person services in full compliance with the Ministry of Health guidelines for independent health facilities and using call-in advance screening for appointments and remote triage and medical services. Human Resources has undertaken a range of comprehensive planning activities with a set of guiding principles that embodies a commitment that everything we do reflects our core values of caring, learning, integrity, and respect. Ensures student success through the completion of the current term and the ongoing delivery of academic operations, and ensures an overriding purpose, a harmonious workplace upon resolution of the state of emergency and the return of employees post-COVID-19. The residents has initiated their pandemic plan, also developed during the H1N1 pandemic. The voluntary move-out refund program successfully reduced the resident population during the semester from 972 students to 193, with a May 1st projection of only about 100 students remaining in residence. By doing this, we can position the residents to be responsive to requests for temporary accommodations that may be made of us. You may have heard of similar arrangements made by the University of Ottawa for one of their residence buildings that was vacant. We need to make sure that we plan in a way that balances the safety of our students who are still in residence with our ability to assist the community if needed. Next, please. We are now in the management phase of this response. This slide demonstrates the alignment between the phasic views of a pandemic and the emergency management process. It illustrates the repetitive nature of interim emergency planning and execution cycles across the near, mid, and long-term periods within this recovery phase. This is a continual process of assessing information and requirements, determining an approach, executing on plans, and adjusting as necessary while maintaining communications, and all in very compressed timelines. This transitory state reflects a period of relative stability for us as we settle into the remote delivery of academic instruction and operations. During this period, we're also looking forward to position the college for our eventual return to normal. Next, please. Everyone is aware that our community has been struggling, especially our healthcare partners. In the early stages of the pandemic, the college was quick to react to needs in the community. Many of you may be aware of some of the efforts the college has taken to support our community, but there are some highlights to share with you. The college organized thousands of dollars of food donations to the Ottawa Mission as we were preparing to be away from the campus. We worked with the Champlain Regional Health Supply Service to organize a significant donation of PPE that everyone now knows means personal protective equipment to the local healthcare community. We are still involved in weekly inventories of any remaining supplies in the event they are needed, and we are working on further donations for long-term care facilities. The college has loaned 9 ventilators to the Ottawa Hospital for their use on the front lines, and we've arranged the loan of 2 ventilators to CHIO that are just waiting to be picked up. We've also committed to the loan of hospitality equipment to a long-term care facility for in-room meal service. And we're working on a loan of medical equipment to another local hospital. Perth and Pembroke campuses have donated much needed PPE and made loans of equipment to their local hospitals as well. The college contributed specialized equipment to support a national team engaged in the design and engineering of a simple ventilator that can be mass produced to meet the federal government's commitment to produce 30,000 ventilators. We also joined in a partnership with CHIO and Hacker Health to use our 3D printers for the production of much needed face shields. All of these initiatives have been made possible through the efforts of our staff across many departments, including procurement, shipping, receiving, the Faculty of Health, Public Safety and Community Studies, applied research, and many other staff who have stepped up to assist where we can. Next slide, please. But there is still a great deal of uncertainty surrounding the pandemic trajectory and the decisions that our federal and provincial governments might make in response to the ongoing public health challenges. There is also uncertainty surrounding the ultimate financial impacts and outcomes from this event for our country, the province, and the college. We do, however, need to be resilient and continue this cycle of responding to changing information and planning the best path forward that we can for the college, our learners, and our employees. This will be sustained over the coming months until we get through this. Next, please. Some of the key objectives during the near future are listed here as the college moves towards recovery. And these are in no particular order. The impact of this event is pervasive and it will persist for considerable time. It will influence our strategic planning and our business planning for the foreseeable future. The long-term planning will emerge as the intermediate planning prepares the college for an eventual return to normal. Next slide. And here we have it, the $64,000 question. I wish I had a crystal ball. So what will our return look like? All I can say with 100% certainty is it's a really good question. There is a great deal of uncertainty around this right now that will be informed in bits and pieces through the coming weeks. What we do know is that timing will be important for us. The sooner we return to our campuses, the greater the emphasis will be on continuing controls. We also know that we will be following the advice of public health when we do return, as the college has done throughout this pandemic, and that we will make decisions in the best interests of the health and wellness of our learners and employees, which the college has already committed and demonstrated. With the college announcement yesterday, we do know that we are not anticipating a general return to face-to-face instruction on July 6th. With respect to longer range planning, we are working on dynamic strategies that can be adjusted once we know when the restrictions will be relaxed and when we can anticipate a full return to face-to-face instruction. The strategies will need to be integrated and include both administrative controls as well as physical environment changes to support the public health recommendations that are in play at that time. Someone had asked recently whether we would be screening people with digital thermometers when we return. I truly hope that we will not be. This practice is not highly effective in these circumstances, and I would hope that the conditions that surround our return will be suitably addressed through reasonable controls such as social distancing and adherence to infection control practices. But certainly we will be following the advice of public health when that time comes. All this to say that there are no plans that have been set in stone just yet in terms of what it will look like when we return. We all have to stay tuned for this to unfold. So with that, I will hand off the presentation, I believe, to Grant Perry, our Chief Financial Officer, to speak about the financial impacts of this pandemic. Thank you.
I'm just gonna jump in here for just one moment. Could I please just remind our panelist speakers to speak a little bit louder than normal without quite yelling. We're seeing some chatter in the chat box and direct text messages encouraging us to speak a little bit louder and clear. Thank you. And with that, over to Dwayne and Grant.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Colin, for that lead up. It's a good place for me to jump off, I guess. So if I'm not speaking loud enough, I can see Ron on my screen. So if I'm not loud enough, Ron, maybe just make a signal, but I'll try to keep it at this volume. Okay, even louder. All right, so good afternoon, Algonquin College community. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today our preliminary high-level projected impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic on our 2020-2021 annual budget. The version that I'm sharing with you today is a shortened version of the presentation that I shared with the board on Monday. On February 24th, the Board of Governors approved the 2020-21 annual budget with a projected net contribution of $5.7 million on all college activity. This budget included provisions for capital, operating, and business plan requirements. It also included requirements to use internally restricted funds to support priority projects and strategic initiatives such as the Student Information System and the Athletics Recreation Center, Enabling Works, and Pedestrian Bridge. The impacts from the COVID-19 event pose a significant risk to the financial outlook for the college in 2021, as well as future years, as the college's net asset balances will reflect the long-term financial cost of these events. The finance team is leading the college through a comprehensive first quarter projection exercise. Many of you are involved in this effort. Thank you. This process will attempt to capture the impacts of this ongoing event, as well as the associated mitigation strategies required to address the financial hurdles that are now before us. The first quarter 2021 financial projection will be presented to our board in early July. We hope by this time we will have a better view of what the year holds in store for us. This report that I'm presenting today will attempt to provide a projected net contribution for all activities with greater certainty. The first quarter 2021 financial projection will incorporate a number of mitigation strategies to present the projected net balance that appropriately balances three primary elements that indicate the success and sustainability of the college, including learner value and satisfaction with college programs and services, employee engagement and well-being, and continued financial health of the college and cash flow to support operations. The global pandemic will equally affect our domestic and international enrollment, with original enrollment projections of 77% for domestic students and 23% for international students. The difficulties of anticipating a return to normalcy is compounded by the need to understand how this pandemic will impact the global community, both throughout the pandemic as well as in the period of time following the end of the pandemic. The purpose of this presentation is to present to you three high-level scenarios based on how we perceive the environment and the potential impact of the college at this time. While the scenarios used in this presentation will likely differ from the eventual reality, we believe that this will allow us to estimate the parameters of the impact of the college's financial position. So this is the slide that we're on now. So I won't say next page, but as I get to the next slide, I'll ask for it to be moved ahead. So the basis of our presentation is tied to three preliminary enrollment assumptions. The assumptions and related enrollment projections change daily. And it is important to remember that at this time, we are trying to center in on a most likely scenario to move forward. So focusing solely on one scenario is not advised. On the top of this slide, you will find the enrollment projections that were included in the approved annual budget. On the far right, you'll notice that our total enrollment was projected to be at 47,724 enrollments for the 2021 fiscal year. The three scenarios that I am presenting here will inform the financials that I will present later in this deck. As we move down the chart, you will see that we have provided you with three scenarios: a best case, a moderate case, and a significant case. On our best case scenario, COVID-19 social distancing measures are relaxed or removed by the end of June 2020, and no further measures are required for fall 20 and winter 2021 terms. This results in an enrollment decrease of to 39,688 enrollments. Students from the winter and spring 2020 terms are able to complete face-to-face instruction requirements beginning in July-August timeframe and progress to next levels or graduate. This scenario aligns with the current plans. In this case, you will notice that the largest impact to enrollment is in the spring term, with domestic enrollment remaining relatively strong for the remaining terms, while we also experience some pullback of international enrollments for all terms. As we move down to our moderate case, COVID-19 social distancing measures are relaxed or removed only at the end of August, and no further measures are required for fall 2020 and winter 21 terms. This case demonstrates the continuation of 100% social distancing until September 1st, 2020. This extension results in greater spring enrollment intake suspensions, which in turn will adversely affect the fall 2020 enrollments. This equates to an enrollment decrease to 29,255 enrollments. The moderate case results in a further reduction of domestic and more notably international student enrollments not returning due to COVID-19 or other financial reasons related to COVID-19. Finally, our significant impact case. With this case, COVID-19 social distancing measures are relaxed or removed only by January 1st, 2021, and no further measures are required for winter 2021 term. As you can see in this scenario, all enrollments are significantly impaired for both spring 2020 and fall 2020 terms. You will also note that this scenario projects a worsening trend in the 2021 term for both domestic and international enrollments. This results in an enrollment decrease to 12,157. Next slide, please. The next 3 slides provide further details on the assumptions that I have just presented. However, I've referred to the most impactful assumptions above. So if there are no questions on the next 3 slides, I will move through these 3 slides and go to our financial projections.
Grant, we won't be able to take questions during each part of these. We have to save them at the end.
Sure. Yep, that's fine.
Now, a little bit louder, if you please.
Okay. So this slide presents you with the financial impact of the 3 scenarios that I had laid out earlier in the format that we used to present our annual budget. You will note that the approved annual budget numbers have also been provided for comparison in the second column of this report. As we move down this chart on funded activity, as would be expected, the biggest impact is noticed in the financial activity of the college, where all direct enrollment related revenues reside, as well as 50% of international student premiums. As you can see, the net contribution is projected to drop by 25 million in the best case scenario as compared to the approved annual budget. And you will see it going from an $11 million net contribution to a negative 14.7 million. As we move down, contract activity and other non-funded activity reflects lost revenue opportunities that have already been identified, as well as additional assumptions for the moderate and significant scenarios applied to reflect how we think this area of the college may be impacted. As we move down to campus services, their net contribution is determined by enrollment levels and online campus service delivery and on-campus service delivery. Therefore, a prolonged online delivery activity will present additional challenges for our campus services team. You will note in the best case scenario, net contribution has dropped by over 50%. And in the moderate scenario, the net contribution of campus services is less than $1 million. Moving down, our International Education Center reflects the drop in international enrollment, losing $11 million in net contribution in the best case scenario, and a further $5 million in the moderate scenario. Our International Education Center also generates contributions from deliveries in other countries. Obviously, this global pandemic presents additional challenges for us to consider. Our strategic investment priorities captures the college's capital investments that we plan to undertake in the fiscal year. Included here are large projects such as the Athletics Recreation Center, which is $37.3 million in this fiscal year. And this is funded primarily by the Students Association. This project, as well as others that are funded by external sources, the Students Association or government, means that delaying or canceling these projects will not improve our bottom line. There are also projects funded, though, from operations, including in this expenditure line, such as our student information system, facilities and IT infrastructure projects, and campus renewal projects, for example. These projects will be reviewed and reprioritized based on our current reality as a way to realign our budget. And finally, our non-cash revenue and non-cash expenditure adjustments reflect the capital spending that we are planning, as well as amortization of existing capital and changes in other corporate liabilities. These numbers will be adjusted as we redefine our capital projections for the year. Next slide, please. I would now like to focus on some positives. Through years of solid financial management and leadership, the college has been able to build sizable reserves from planned contributions to these reserves, as well as from earned surpluses in our annual financial performance. These reserves now give us the opportunity to help address our financial challenges while continuing to focus on future needs. I would like to show you how we may use some of these college savings to lessen the short-term financial impact to the college. This slide presents the projected impacts to our net assets of the college without the full consideration of all possible mitigation strategies that are in progress. If I can call your attention to the large red box, these numbers speak to the reserves that are available to the college to respond in this situation. The first box, the first line in the red box, the appropriations, is a small reserve that's set aside for year-end expenditures, so we have that to access. Our specific reserves includes infrastructure renewal projects, academic equipment, and our reserve fund for our enterprise resource planning system, such as the student information system, as well as many other funds that we hold. The next one is our contingency reserve fund. This fund represents 3% of our external revenues and is set aside to be used in emergency cases such as this. As such, this would be our first draw to manage an unplanned deficit budget. This reserve fund, while not unique amongst colleges, is a fund that many colleges do not have to fall back on. The decision to establish this reserve fund dates back some time and now provides us with the opportunity to appreciate the wisdom of this decision. And finally, as we move down, the general reserve fund represents money set aside for future capital expansion, such as new or replacement facilities or major capital improvements. You will note in our best case scenario, in response to a deficit budget, we fully draw down the contingency reserve fund of the 10.5 million. And you can see we've also taken a portion of our specific reserves. As we move across to the right, in the moderate case scenario, we fully deplete our specific reserves and also utilize a portion of our future capital expansion fund. Finally, in the last column, the most significant scenario, we have fully depleted all college reserves and have incurred an additional deficit of 10.6 million. Next slide, please. Finally, the college is actively reviewing and pursuing a number of mitigation strategies. Some of these strategies are easy to implement, others will take some time in planning. An example of some of the strategies being considered and actively pursued are suspension of departmental carryover positive excess net contributions, so under our RCM fund, our contingency reserve balance, which I just spoke of, the 10.5 million, a special contingency that we hold in our operations budget, $1 million, a deferral of strategic investment priority projects, which may represent up to $20 million in expenditure reductions, suspension of selected discretionary expenses, and these will be addressed through our budgeting process, delaying of the hiring of some vacancies. At any given time, the college has between 40 and 80 vacancies on an ongoing basis. Our workforce planning exercise that is currently underway, and undertaking a program and services review as a long-term focus activity to rebuild our reduced reserves. And finally, we will continue to advocate for additional government support. Next slide, please. As noted earlier, the finance team will be leading the college through a comprehensive first quarter projection exercise. The results of this review will be presented to the board in July. I thank you in advance for your thoughtful participation as we work through rebalancing our financial position in this challenging time. As a community, we have successfully responded to a number of financial challenges in the past years, and COVID-19 presents but one more challenge to our college. I know that our college community is resilient and up to the task of ensuring that all of our actions are focused on learner value and satisfaction with college programs and services, employee engagement and well-being, and continuing financial health of the college and cash flow to support our operations. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to just say thank you to Grant for all that information. Just a couple housekeeping things before we go on. I'd like to continue to encourage folks to speak just a little bit more loudly than you think you need to. Also, that we are getting behind in our agenda time already. I acknowledge that the information is important and that sometimes the difficulty moderating is to share messages like this. So Aaron and Chris, if you would keep that in mind as we go forward. With that, I would like to turn the floor over to the academic team and hear from Dr. Jensen about the Academy.
All right, I always hate following Grant for any number of reasons. And first, let me apologize. I have just turned off my video. My internet is of such a state that if the video is on and I'm trying to speak, all that comes out is robot noises. So I'll turn my video back on when I'm done speaking. This academic, this global pandemic really has turned the world upside down and given it a good shake. The landscape's been molten and ever shifting, and we've had to make decisions about the future with incomplete and unfortunately rapidly changing information. We've been forced to adapt to a new reality and change our approaches to transforming hopes and dreams into lifelong success. Next slide, please. So let me take you back to early March. Colin has already shared a number of this, so I'll try to get through this quickly. But a global pandemic had just been declared. Very little was known about the transmission of the virus, and we were and still are all worried about the health and safety of our learners and colleagues. And at that time, it became very clear that physical distancing was going to be necessary to flatten the curve of the spread of the virus and help to keep all of us safe and healthy. So in response, the college took the first of many unprecedented actions. And please note there's that word again. Claude used it in his opening remarks. But we chose to suspend classes for a week in order to give faculty time to convert their courses for emergency remote delivery. And note this term is used differently than online course. The typical development cycle for online teaching and learning can be anywhere from 4 to 12 months for courses and programs. So 1 week of conversion does not align to any of the development principles that we would use for online teaching and learning. There's even a recognition of this and support of the use of the term remote emergency learning by online teaching and learning research and development community members. So during that week, Learning and Teaching Services mobilized almost overnight to provide significant supports to full-time and part-time faculty. As Colin mentioned earlier, over 500 faculty attended training sessions during this week. Lots of attention was paid to helping faculty learn the tools that will be required for this emergency remote delivery of their courses. Tools like what we're using now, Zoom. Modules designed to help faculty develop skills for teaching in an online environment were made available. However, we recognized that 1 week was not enough time to help faculty become experts in online teaching. And I have to admit, our faculty were amazing. 1 week later, by the end of the winter term had been fully reorganized, and everything that could possibly be delivered remotely was up and running, and plans for recovering remaining learning outcomes that required face-to-face activities were laid. I really truly am astounded by what was accomplished that week. And so once we had the completion of the winter term moving forward, we then turned our minds to the spring term. Plans were made to delay the start of the spring term to give faculty more time to adapt to remote delivery for the start of the term. And please note again, this time I didn't use the word emergency remote delivery. With a little bit more time, we're hoping to get to a remote delivery that will then begin to border on a truly fully developed online curriculum. So the first 6 weeks of the shortened spring term were to be delivered remotely. Then, based on the assumption that we would be able to return to face-to-face activity in early July, the last 6 weeks of the term could be delivered in person. And Learning and Teaching Services has been gearing up to provide even more support during the weeks leading up to the start of the spring 20 term on May 19th. And this is not just help with tools, but also a variety of professional development to help move from emergency remote delivery to remote delivery, and again, bordering on those fully developed online courses. Please note that details outlining available and planned supports will be shared very soon on My AC, and you can always check out the LTS websites. And I do recognize that it is by no means business as usual yet. Our course outlines need to reflect what that we are still in a global pandemic. So a disclaimer is going to be added to all of the spring 20 course outlines, noting this. And also, in the event of significant changes, faculty need to work with their colleagues in their chair to ensure that those changes are in keeping with the intentions of the program and the published course outlines. So that was the plan. But to paraphrase Robert Burns, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Next slide, please. So as more reliable information became available over time, we do continually reassess our previous decisions and plans. So yesterday, the preponderance of current data led us to decide that our original plan for the spring term had gone awry and was unlikely to be realized. So we've moved off to plan B. And this slide was included in its entirety in a college-wide communication that went out yesterday afternoon. So I'm not going to talk all the way through it, but please note that it does describe our modified approach to the spring term that does not require any face-to-face instruction, or perhaps at the very end of August for certain very select activities and placements. And I should also like to note that while this slide doesn't say it specifically, the priority of activity for returning to face-to-face will be, we need to complete the winter term face-to-face, the outstanding requirements first. We need to ensure that those students are able to finish those terms, and many of them, that was their graduating level. The next priority will be completion of any face-to-face requirements for the spring term, before we then turn our minds to any face-to-face requirements for the beginning of the fall 20 term. Next slide, please. So looking forward, a lot of things that I want to say here. Colin has already mentioned the reliable data as to what will be safe to undertake for the fall 20 term does not yet exist. I do recognize how painfully uncomfortable this is, but at this time we are not able to tell you what the fall 20 term is going to look like. Unlike the universities, we are an institution of applied learning. While we are adapting to the circumstances and going remote for now, we cannot continue to do this indefinitely and still prepare our students for their careers without applied learning activities. So at this point, we do not want to make a decision to move fully remote for fall 20 unless we are forced to do so by the circumstances. This would only further delay our learners progressing through their education. And again, we want very much for our learners to be able to progress as fast as is reasonably possible. Therefore, the academic area, in concert with many other departments across the college, are developing a series of contingency plans with a variety of options for what the fall term might look like. They are in their early stages of development at this point, with many variables being factored in. Our plans are all first predicated upon keeping all of our employees and learners safe, and then designed to enable our learners to progress as best as possible through their education. The next point that I want to touch on a little bit, necessity is the mother of invention. Somebody submitted a question previously to this town hall that said, remote teaching is cool and can have meaningful applications post-crisis. This would be an accidental leap forward into the learner-driven plan. What steps will be taken to incorporate this innovative strategy into our new normal without negatively impacting rigor or academic freedom, obviously? I really could not agree more. I loved that question and that sentiment. As we've all been taken out of our comfort zones and asked to rethink how we will help our learners succeed, new and innovative approaches are being developed. Personalized approaches that are at the core of the learner-driven plan. Universal design for learning, flexibility, I can never say that word, modularizing curriculum, and many, many other things. When we return to campus, normal will be different than it was when we left. We need to actively take the best of what we did before COVID-19 and combine it with what we've learned during the pandemic to make the new normal better. At this point, before we started the town hall, folks were talking about theme music, and I kept thinking about what I was going to say here. Insert the theme from the $6 Million Man at this point. we're going to rebuild things and we're going to make it better than it was before. If you don't know what the $6 Million Man is, Google it or look it up on YouTube. I'm old. But anyway, after this crisis is over, no one is going to be mandated to continue online delivery of what was previously face-to-face. However, I certainly do hope and expect that all of the good things that we've learned by being forced to do things differently will be retained and added to the new norm. And again, back to, I keep tooting LTS's horn. They did some really cool, amazing things in getting ready for the winter. They've got even better things and more things planned for the spring term and will be available throughout the entire spring term. Please, if you haven't already, check out what they've got available. They are there to help make things better for you and for our learners. And then speaking about our learners, just a few notes. There are lots of collaborative efforts going on across the college, particularly between the academic area and student services, but really every department across the college is paying attention to how we can best support our learners. The federal government just yesterday announced new financial supports for students that we're just now starting to wrap our heads around and figure out how best to have our students take advantage of. But that the learners, it's where I want to end my presentation. It's what we're all about, and everything that we are trying to do really is aimed at that support for learners. It takes a village, it's a team effort, however you want to say it, but that's what we're all about. And so that's really all I've got for now. Thank you for your attention. I spoke as quickly as I possibly could, and I'll turn it back over to Ron.
All right, as I'm sitting here listening to Chris talk, I can't help but wonder if it was coincidence or providence that I mentioned that we had to keep it short. Thanks.
I can speak fast when I have to.
Thanks so much, Dr. Jansen, for your contribution, and to the rest of the academic team, of course. Now let's turn the floor over to Erin with some updates from the Human Resources team. Erin.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ron and Chris. My name is Erin Langevin, and I'm the Director of Labor Relations. I'm here with my colleagues from Human Resources, Penny Dockrell and Maureen Costella, and I too am having a little bit of internet connection problems this afternoon. We're all expected to do our part in supporting the college community, and I'm proud of the care and collaboration that has been taken as the Workforce Pandemic Mitigation Plan was developed. It is a creative, employee-centric plan and is meant to assist with temporary measures as we move through this unprecedented time. Can you please advance the screen? The plan was developed by Human Resources through ASET and was founded on the following information: the college's guiding principles, college's core values, an understanding of what other colleges are planning across the province with the support of the College Employer Council, following the guidelines of public health agencies, the City of Ottawa, federal and provincial government directives, and finally, we're also following best HR practices while ensuring alignment with legislation and the information within our collective agreements. I'll now turn it over to Maureen. Advance the slide, please.
Hello all. My name is Maureen Costella, and I'm the manager of total compensation, which includes our areas of compensation, benefits, and pension. Happy to be here to explain this plan. The mitigation plan that was developed, as Erin explained, when we worked in the development of this plan, we follow our guiding principles throughout the documentation. We recognize that this is a situation, a global pandemic, that none of us asked for it to happen, but we are all in this together as a community. And we want to go through and have the least impact as possible as we start to put in the mitigation plan in process. Obviously, the events of the society right now with the pandemic are very fluid, and we don't have a magic wand that we can see what will happen in future. So when we developed the pandemic plan, we took the approach of starting off as employee least impact possible for our employees and by employee group. And then we have to make some tough decisions as the pandemic increases. over time. But the important of it is by starting with the least impact to our employees, we're hoping that we can get through this period together as a community and come out the other end stronger. So when we looked at the pandemic plan, we looked at initially breaking it down by employment groups. And what can we do initially with our employment groups to start working together? There are various options that are involved, and it does escalate as time goes on. Two options that we have recently rolled out to our managers and the ACLT is the request for individuals to use up all excess vacation and scheduled vacation during the next 4 months, so up until the end of August. We recognize that what's happening in society right now, you're all seeing your neighbors, many are losing their jobs, many are having situations where financial abilities, financial security is very much compromised. The college's decision to request people to take paid vacation during this time and to share the workload was not viewed as an unreasonable request for us to start to move forward with managing on the mitigation options. From that approach, we also developed a responsibility assignment matrix. And this matrix was developed to ensure that we had a holistic approach with various of our options that we had to look at. We mapped out all aspects of the mitigation plan, including the deliverables, and we identified who would be responsible, accountable, consulted in an effort to ensure that we had a holistic plan that included everybody as we worked through. Several project of this scale does require a large degree of coordination. So as part of that matrix, we've also developed project timelines and deliverables so we can track the initiatives going forward. One of the things that we're looking at in the mitigation option, in addition to the vacation, is looking at where we can use people if they're currently not fully utilized now. Are there areas where they can help out throughout the college in other areas? To explain that a little further, I'll turn the microphone over to my colleague, Penny Dockrell.
Thanks, Maureen. So I'm Penny Dockrell, and I work in our Human Resources Department. I'm the manager for talent and HR programs. So as Maureen mentioned, we had a couple of different thoughts in mind when we started drafting the redeployment program. And really, the main thought was what work needs to be done to ensure the success of our students moving forward, to make sure that our departments are successful, and to make sure that we move forward collectively as a college. Secondly, and tied to that first point, is that how do we utilize our employees' strengths and their full capacity to be able to ensure the success? So those were the two foundational thoughts when we were developing the redeployment program. Basically, what we come out with is we're stronger when we work together than when we work individually. And so part of the redeployment program really comes down to managers figuring out what's the capacity that I have in my department with my employees. And if I can't fill that capacity, or if I have further work that needs to be done where I don't have the capacity in my department, can I have other employees from across the college come in and help us out to make sure that that work still gets done? So you'll find over the next day or two, more information will come out specifically for employees in terms of what this might mean, specifically for managers and what that might mean for them. There's a structure in place, there's guidelines in place, and we are working with our union partners and all of the managers across the college to make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward together collectively. Maureen?
Thank you, Penny. Next slide, please. One of the things that we are doing on a continual basis is we are looking at all the various government funding programs that are coming out. There are many programs coming out, some that impact the employer and some that impact employees. We're continually looking at them. We're looking with our college council as well. And we are assessing these programs to ensure if they're viable, we are absolutely going to be participating in them. If they are not viable for many other reasons at this time, we are looking at them and just keeping a watch on them for further. So I'll turn it back to Penny. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Maureen. We're ping-ponging a little bit back and forth. Your HR team's been working really hard together. So as you can see, we work really well together. So I'm sure many of you are thinking about what are our next steps? So what does this all mean? What is this mitigation plan and how do we start operationalizing some of this? So what we wanted to leave everyone with some really collective thoughts, and just to know that all of the colleges are going through similar scenarios, that we're working together to be consistent across the whole college sector. So Algonquin College isn't alone in all of this. We're working with all of the other colleges across the college sector as well. Like Maureen said earlier, this situation is really fluid. Like Chris said, what he sent out yesterday, today has the potential to be changed and a little bit different. And what we say today might change a little bit depending on how the situation progresses forward. But know that the college has been spending a lot of time planning, and a lot of thought and consideration has been put into all of the plans that have been developed. So the mitigation option for the utilization of excess vacation liability, the current year vacation over the next 4 months, that's been communicated to ACLT and to people leaders. So if there are questions out there for our employees, feel free to get in touch with your people managers, or you can always send an email request or question to humanresources@algonquincollege.com. Any employee who has vacation already booked will be expected to take the time as we previously booked it. So we won't be canceling vacations at this point. We'll be expected, I think in Claude's words, we'll be expected to continue with our vacation and perhaps take a staycation. Managers will work with their employees to book their vacation over the next few months. And I think that goes until the end of August. And so much like any other summer period, we'll be booking our vacation time, kind of like usual, understanding that the situation is a little bit different right now. We're likely not traveling, we're not doing any of those things, but we are still going to book our vacation. It's really important that our employees still get a break, and that as employees, we still take a break from work as well. So information will be shared, as I mentioned, with employees and managers early next week about the redeployment program. We'll be happy to share any information that we have. More information sessions will be coming, so we'll be sharing all of that information in the very near future. Ron, I'll hand it back over to you.
All right. Well, I would just like to offer my heartfelt thanks to Aaron and Penny and Maureen and the entire Human Resources team who has put all the thinking that has gone into that last section. Just give me one moment while my coworker here is not observing social distancing. I just need to move him over as we dive into the next section here. So things are going to get a little bit more complicated for some of us as we move into the pre-submitted questions and then ultimately the live answer questions. Before we do that though, first, and again, thank you to those of you who have submitted questions in advance. I'd like to remind folks that I may need to ask for your patience as we work through this. Not only will I be monitoring some of these notes, but I know that I need to monitor the chats, my cell phone and emails for a variety of reasons as folks help keep me on track, cue different parts of this, and ensure that from a behind the scenes perspective, they run as smoothly as possible. So with that, we will proceed on to the pre-submitted questions. There are approximately 10 of those, and the first question is, why is the term, quote, remote used for what will now clearly be fully and intentionally online teaching and learning? We will ask Chris Jansen to take this question.
Actually, I believe I fully answered that one in my presentation, between the difference between emergency remote delivery, and a fully developed online course.
Very good. All right, moving on to question 2. What is the plan for faculty if the decision is made to deliver fall courses remotely? When will we know if we are teaching face-to-face versus online for the fall term? If it is online, what is the plan for course preparation? As an example, we only have 1 week in August after annual leave to possibly prepare. Back to Chris.
Well, again, I've touched on a fair bit of this already. What is the plan? Well, the plan is we don't know what the plan is yet. and we are actively working on a variety of contingency plannings. And really, so the response to what are we going to do to help faculty prepare is part of that contingency planning. Again, I recognize it's uncomfortable to not have firm answers at this point as to what that will look like. But we will be developing those plans and utilizing the really good work and opportunities that we have for faculty in place in the summer to help us with those plans for the fall. So we'll be sure to take into account properly what effort will be needed to prepare for whichever contingency plan we go with for the fall.
All righty. Well, let's move on to question number 3. How will the college prepare full-time and part-time faculty for the reality of teaching online going forward? There are very unique and varied needs and characteristics of both online learners and educators. Online education pedagogy must be supported to ensure success. For example, the proposed is it bachelor, I know business bachelor arts, trades management honors degree fully online. Chris, and if you could confirm the BBA acronym.
Bachelor of Business Administration and Trades Management. And again, I believe I've touched on a fair bit of this already with the supports that Learning and Teaching Services are putting in place to help faculty really fully develop their skill sets around developing and delivering fully online courses. And in particular, the faculty that will be involved in the delivery of that new degree, if and when it's finally approved for delivery. I'm hoping they'll take full advantage of that bit of professional development through Learning and Teaching Services.
Very good. Let's move on to question number 4. How and when will Algonquin College be compensating employees of all levels, full and part-time, for the cost of their home internet, IT infrastructure, cell phone, and home phone bills? We'll toss this over to Dwayne and Grant.
Thank you, Ron. Afternoon, everyone. So actually just yesterday, there was a communication issued on my AC that identifies an employee reimbursement program for interim work from home arrangements. So in that communication, we've identified that the college will compensate employees who have had to incur incremental costs to increase their internet capacity, as an example, or if they have to buy office supplies to facilitate working at home. There's at that communication, there's a link to a claim form to use so that the college can compensate employees for those costs.
All right, very good. Moving on to question number 5. Remote teaching. Oh, I think we've done this one, Chris. Yeah, the remote teaching.
Yeah.
So we can move on?
Yep.
Very good. Moving on to 6. Algonquin College currently doesn't have a work from home policy. Given the successful transition during the pandemic, is this something Algonquin College can consider putting in place? I'm not referring to full-time basis, but perhaps 1 or even 2 days a week for employees who are able to work from home. Thank you. Let's toss this one over to Erin.
Thanks, Ron. Prior to the pandemic, Human Resources was working on a draft flexible work arrangement policy. When the temporary measures from the pandemic are lifted, Human Resources will resume working on the draft policy for consideration and review.
I'm not sure. Oh, you're back. Okay, I'll let you go, Ron.
Yeah, no, it just a little technology thing there for a moment. All right, thank you, Erin. Let's move on to number 7. Have there been any confirmed cases of COVID-19 within the Algonquin College community, staff or students? How about Colin? Colin going once. Colin going twice.
I know he was having, he got dropped off a little bit earlier from the, his laptop died. I think he was trying to call back in.
Yeah, that's no problem. We'll just come back to that.
Ron, did we skip a question? It looked like I'm not sure if we skipped a question before.
We did skip number 5 because Chris had done that in his presentation.
Okay, and the one after that? Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'd rather touch base to make sure. Thank you so much. We will come back to number 7 though once we have Colin back on the line. So we'll turn our minds to number 8. In lieu of faculty layoffs, will the college have another voluntary retirement incentive within the next year?
The college has no plans for another voluntary retirement incentive for any employee groups. The nature of a VRI would incur further costs to the college.
All right. So moving on to question number 9. Due to the reduction to 12 weeks for the spring 20 term, many courses will have to make adjustments to their evaluations. Are we going to revise the COM course outlines to reflect these adjustments? If not, the course outline will not accurately represent the course. If the course outline were to be applied towards advanced standing or transfer of credit in the future, is there not an integrity issue? Over to
And I covered that one in my presentation too, Ron.
Okay, very good. Number 10, what professional development might be available and when for teachers in the event we are converting fall courses to online delivery? Chris?
And again, I point you to LTS, my AC, and the LTS website, but I've covered that one in my presentation.
All right. So I'm just going to circle through the camera here to see if I see Colin. And I do not. So Sophia from events, will you help me to remember to come back to that as we now turn our minds to the live questions? Before we go into that, so again, folks, we do commit to answering that, just a little bit out of order here. Other than that, that'll have concluded the pre-submitted question portion. And so now we'll go into these live questions. Before we do that, though, I'd like to take a quick moment to remind some folks of the process. We have acknowledged and saved about 30 minutes for live questions. Again, all of your questions must be entered into the question and answer box only. That is different from the chat. So please make sure that you're using the question and answer box only. I will read them aloud and a member of our panelists will answer. Please note that we will try to get through all of the questions. They will come on a first come, first serve basis. If you're watching through the live stream link on YouTube, please submit your question in the chat and Sophia, our events manager, will get them to me. This is the point where I'll need to be managing myself through not only the question and answer box here online, but also with some help using SMS text messages on my phone. So as you see that, just know that's what I'm working on here. Okay, so give me one moment as I move out of this and into the Q&A. All right, so working from what looks to be the only question on there now is a question for President Brule. Grant Perry's presentation was excellent, very clear, but potentially very stark. There is a big variance between the best and the significant impact scenarios. Which scenario and your executive team feel we need to prepare and plan for?
Thank you. Unmute. I always do that. I start off and then I realize I'm muted. So a great question. And we're planning, I think at the moment for the, it sounds very Canadian, the middle ground or the compromise, the moderate case. If you were at the board meeting and had heard the discourse that took place at our board meeting on Monday, the indications would point that we're not in a base case scenario at this point, and hence why we made modifications to our spring summer term that Dr. Jensen just spoke to. So at the moment, our plan is aiming to the middle, the moderate.
Great. So thank you, Sophia. I do see that there are many other questions. It was just needing to scroll. I'll go to the next one. Question for Dr. Jensen. Faculty need to start planning for the fall now. Time is of the essence if several program levels need to go online. When will these contingency plans be made available?
Well, I've got some good answer and some bad answer to that, or less comfortable answer. The less comfortable answer is, we still don't exactly know what is going to happen. However, oops, the question just went away. Anyway, I think I remember all of it. The contingency planning that's happening now is being done in concert with the deans and chairs, and the chairs are having conversations with their faculty. And some of the parameters that we need to take into account, even as we're looking into all of the scenarios for the fall term, is it's highly unlikely that we will be able to return to exactly the way things were before March. In other words, we fully expect that there will be some social distancing, some physical distancing requirements in whatever return to face-to-face happens, whenever it happens, which are going to place some interesting challenges in front of us, getting folks back into these face-to-face learning activities. So in certain circumstances, there are opportunities to decrease the human population density on the Algonquin campus as we return to face-to-face, by having some courses of some levels of some programs continue to or move to an online delivery. And it seems likely that some of those are going to happen, and those conversations are happening right now, and some of that work can begin right now. And so I would suggest that for faculty to have conversations with your colleagues, with your program coordinator, and with your chair, to discuss what those options are. And if you believe that your course, your level of your program is a good candidate for that, that would certainly be helpful for us as we move forward. And that planning work can happen right now. But as for other things that are more difficult decisions and that are less well suited for continuing remote delivery or even online delivery, those decisions will be made in the coming weeks. I hesitate to say months. I really expect that we'll have at least a prime plan for the fall term within a few weeks. But recognize that the information is still continually shifting around us, and we may need, if we make a decision too soon, we may need to change it 4 or 5 times before we finally get to September.
All right. Thank you.
So as soon as possible is my answer.
All righty. Moving on to the next question. If you have skills that are not used or reflected in your current job, how will they be reflected in the job pool? I'm going to reread that one. If you have skills that are not used or reflected in your current job, how will they be reflected in the job pool? Erin?
I'm going to turn that over to Penny, Ron.
Okay.
Thanks, Erin. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, the process that we've put in place is that we've created a form for employees to fill out once they've been identified that they would have some capacity to take on additional responsibilities. And that form in itself, you'd be able to detail what your current strengths are, what your experience is, versus creating a resume that takes a lot of time and requires a template and all of that kind of stuff. We would also have specific opportunities that might be available posted to our internal website. And so employees will be able to see what's available, and then they'll be able to submit the form that we've created to be able to explain what their current experiences are, and again, what their skill set might be as well.
Great. Thank you, Penny. On to the next question. The college is one of the larger employers in the area and, excuse me, has made liberal use of the partial load faculty for teaching services. The cancellation because of COVID are likely to impact these folks more than many others. Will the college be providing supports such as creative workloads or financial assistance for partial load people who rely on the college for their income? Who would like to take that one?
Just that HR start with that, because that's really a workforce planning question.
Very good. Over to HR.
So we are going to be in the process of reviewing contracts because of the changes to the spring term yesterday. We're still reviewing the information and the workloads that are available.
And would anybody like to add anything else to that answer? All right, we will be moving on. Financial support is only available to our domestic students, and I'm hearing from many frustrated international students who aren't able to access the financial supports and are living 10 to a home, not working, and are having anxiety over money and being so far from home. What are we doing to help them out? I'll send that to Laura.
Sure, happy to take that question. And it's a good one. The government is starting to broaden some of its financial support to our international students, which is great. But we're also at the college creating a COVID emergency fund, and we will be in a position to announce, sorry, a little bit of feedback on my mic, to announce that at the end of next week and have an online application open for both our domestic and our international students. We're also doing things like relaxing their tuition deposit amounts to ease that burden, and just looking at every possible opportunity to help our international and our domestic students. So we're continuing to do that on a daily basis. For international students, I would suggest too that that the International Education Center has been fantastic, and I know they've been getting between 100 and 200 emails a day from students at the onset of this. I'm not quite sure if that's dropped a little bit. So the best option too is, and they're the most well-versed on resources for our international students, to have them connect directly with our International Education Center, who are fielding all those calls and directing students to the right resources. And as I say, we won't stop working on that. We know our international students can potentially be our most vulnerable students during this time.
Great, Laura. Thank you so much for taking that question. Moving on. Question: how will partial load staff benefits work with the spring semester being suspended? Over to HR.
I'll turn that over to Maureen.
Yep, not a problem. With the partial load staff benefits, one thing a lot of people may not be aware of, Algonquin College is under a multi-employer plan with all the other 24 colleges throughout the province. So there are things where we are limited that we cannot do. The partial load staff benefits will work in accordance with how it has always worked. So if you finish a partial load assignment and you have a written contract to start a new partial load assignment, you will be eligible to bridge your benefits over the summer period. If you do not have a written contract, you cannot bridge benefits through our plan. However, Sun Life Financial does have a good plan that you can participate in and transition over to. And because you are coming off a group plan, there will be no evidence of insurability required. So it is an option for people to purchase that plan. It is at market rates, but it's a very good plan. And if you're interested, please contact Human Resources, and that may help you get through until you come back to be another partial load again.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. On to the next question. Can you clarify in more detail excess versus current vacation? Are staff expected to use all vacation time and not have any banked once the fall semester starts? Over to HR.
I will turn that over to Maureen.
Excess vacation and current vacation are actually different. Excess vacation is the carried over vacation that an individual carried over into a new year because they did not use it. That stays with the individual, but it's also registered as a financial liability on our financials. The current vacation means that your current year accrual. So what you have is we have a lot of individuals who have excess vacation. They've carried it over from previous years and current vacation. Staff are expected to use all their excess vacation time and the current vacation time, understanding that support staff come July 1st will get another allotment of vacation time for the 2020-2021 vacation year. The plan we've put in place is not asking you to use your allotment that is coming in from your 2020 and 2021 that you will get this July 1st and for administrative starting in September. Rather, it is asking you to use the end of your excess and your current that we are now not seeing used, but we're coming to the end of that vacation year. So we're hoping to have that done by the end of August 31st, although we will permit, if you can't get it all done, a maximum of 5 days to be carried over into the next vacation year.
All right, thank you, Maureen. Moving on. What is the anticipated impact on part-time professors? Will we only be hired back after all full-time faculty have been reallocated? Who would like that one? I'll read it again. What is the anticipated impact on part-time professors? Will we only be hired back after all full-time faculty have been reallocated?
The spring term is definitely smaller than we had originally planned for. There are a number of program levels that have been suspended due to requirements of face-to-face. In addition, we are experiencing much lower international enrollments that might cause a contraction of sections within a program level that is being offered. And as we have always done, we fully utilize our full-time faculty first. And in this case, there is likely to be fewer courses available for other than full-time faculty. And so hired back after full-time faculty have been reallocated. I don't quite understand what reallocated means in this case. The full-time faculty are going to be assigned as much teaching as we have available for them. Anybody from HR want to add anything to that?
No, Chris, I think that makes sense.
All right, moving right along then. What about employees whose contracts are coming to an end after July? Will they be ending now too? HR.
Hi, Ron. So the mitigation options that Penny spoke about earlier in our presentation, we're going through and looking at the capacity and the work that needs to be done, and then tying that to the academic continuity plan. And based on that information that we're getting back from our people leaders and our ACL team members, we'll be making informed choices and then offering information to those employees that may be impacted if there is an impact.
Very good.
Ron, that question was asked and answered before, same question.
I'm not sure which one you mean that question.
The college is one of the larger employers.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, moving along. I appreciate that, Chris. Oh, let's see. Given the anticipated reduction in students for the spring term, how do we anticipate canceling any part-time faculty contract offerings?
This does lead back to the answer I gave to the previous question. We do anticipate there being some smaller number of levels and sections within levels this spring. Do we anticipate canceling? We are really only in the early stages of using part-time faculty and figuring out how we would use part-time faculty for the spring term. I recognize with the announcement yesterday that we've changed our plan and are suspending all face-to-face activities for the spring is going to result in the suspension of a few more levels of a few more programs, with that list being finalized pretty much as I speak. And I am unaware of, that doesn't mean there aren't any, but I am not aware of any contracts that have been fully issued for the spring term yet. And again, I don't know if HR wishes to follow on with any part of an additional clarity on that.
Again, we would be looking at any information that comes into us after the mitigation options are filled out. And we would be contacting people individually based on their workload and if it's tied to the academic continuity plan, and making our informed choices at that point.
Okay, so Ron asked me just to take the next question. He had to just step away for a moment. Does the critical disability insurance cover COVID-19?
This is Erin. I'll turn it over to Maureen.
That is a really good question. Critical disability insurance is a very unique insurance. And under the terms of the plan document, it actually specifies which disabilities are covered. So that insurance applies if you have a disability related to cancer, heart attack, a stroke. Generally, insurances have that defined in the contracts. COVID-19, being that it's a recently coming up virus, is not in the contract. So no, it would not be covered.
Thank you for answering that. And Tracy, thank you for helping out there. How can Algonquin College staff be the most helpful to the corporation at this time?
Maybe I'll take that one, Ron.
Sure, thank you, please.
Yeah, I think how AC staff can be the most corporate, well, most helpful to our community, first of all, is continue to adhere to the guidelines that have been provided to us by our public health agencies. That's how we flatten that curve most effectively, by remaining at home, by maintaining social distancing, and allowing the authorities to be able to manage the exit out of the pandemic and the return to work in a staged fashion. Specifically to the college, how the staff can continue to be helpful is continue what you've been doing. Frankly, you've been awesome, and I can't say that enough. You've been innovative. You've been eager to adapt to the situation as it evolved, and we couldn't have done what we did without what you've been able to accomplish. So to me, continue to do that, continue to put your ideas forward. You know, there are lots of things that will need to occur in the next, I want to say the next month in our planning, finalizing what we're doing for spring, summer, and then the planning for the fall. And we need quick answers from everyone. So the rapidity of our planning, going to managers and managers going to their people to seek answers quickly and turn this around so we can adjust our plan is critical. The timing, and when we set timelines, to be able to respect those timelines and come back quickly with the answers, I think is going to be the most helpful corporately at this time.
Great, thank you, Claude. Before I go on with some questions, I do just want to do a little bit of a time check here. We have reserved approximately 5 minutes near the end for a closing, so we'll do a solid 10 more minutes of questions. There is only one coming in from the YouTube online questions, so we'll get to that too. I did just do a quick scroll through and wanted to acknowledge that we're going to do as best we can to finish these questions, but to remind folks that in the event that we don't get them done, they will be answered by the executive team and our stakeholders and then posted to my AC along with the presentation. Moving on. Why would students enroll or return to Algonquin to take courses remotely when other post-secondary education institutions already have robust online programs and courses? Chris, would you like that one?
Sure. I've been staring at this question as it's been coming up, and I have about 80 different answers to that. Actually, I have more than that. I don't even know where to begin. Part of it is we are known for, we have already been known for being one of the strongest, largest institutions delivering online education through the former CCOL, now AC Online. We have a long history of being able to do this and do this very well. And we are utilizing that experience and that knowledge through learning and teaching services as well as AC Online to help all of our faculty get to the point where they're delivering really, and using the language of the question, robust online programs and courses. I would suggest to you that again, we are different than the universities. The types of programming we offer is different from the universities. We are applied education. It's in our full official title, and therefore our sister institutions across the province, the fellow colleges, are all in the same boat we are, except we're ahead of them. We're ahead of the game because of our strength in delivering online courses. As a matter of fact, we work through Ontario Learn quite frequently. A number of courses that we have developed are what is being offered on those various offerings across the province. I would also suggest that Algonquin College is truly a unique and wonderful institution, and what Claude mentioned just even a moment ago and what had been mentioned earlier in a number of presentations, Algonquin rocks. It's the people that have done this, and what we've accomplished in such a short period of time is exactly why any student should want to come to Algonquin College, because of the care, the dedication, and the passion that everybody has thrown into adapting to this crisis and really putting the students at the forefront of our decisions.
Well said, Dr. Jensen. Moving on. Hello, Claude. Well, I wonder where this question's going. Hello, Claude. In 2019, international students contribute $22 billion to the Canadian economy, $6 billion in Ontario alone. Mm-hmm. What steps is Algonquin College taking to work with the government agencies such as the Canadian Bureau for International Education, Immigration Canada, etc., to think of creative ways that we can continue international student enrollment for fall 2020 and not have them lose an entire year?
That's a great question, Jess Winder. And it's certainly something that not only our college, but all institutions worldwide are paying attention to. As travel restrictions continue, borders close, health checks being required before people can leave their country, health check at the receiving end of the other country, and the need for quarantine. A lot of questions are surrounding international enrollment for the future, and it's a big question mark. So what are we doing in that regard? The colleges have been lobbying IRCC, that's the Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada, for loosening some of the existing rules that exist for example, international students to be able to take part of their education online, offshore, and not compromise their work permit. Once they come to Canada to complete their education, and have that portion that they took online while they were in their home country count towards that time towards their work permit. So that's one example that we've been able to work effectively as a college system through Colleges Ontario and through CICAN, that's College and Institutes Canada, our umbrella organization that we are a member of for all colleges and institutes in the country, and lobbying with IRCC in order to put this in place. Now, that's only in place for the summer. More work needs to be done to lobby for further loosening of that restriction and other imaginative ways in which we can attract international students to study in Canada. That advocacy continues with both Colleges Ontario as well as CICAN with the federal government.
Very good. Thank you, Claude, for that. Next question. Is there any version of the workforce plans where layoffs are being considered? Back to you, Claude.
Yeah, I mean, the WPMP, the Workforce Pandemic Mitigation Plan that has been covered by Erin, Penny, and Maureen, lays out a series of options and priorities for handling situations by employee group, but really by employee as well. You can imagine a scenario where there is a limited vacation for someone, and following that, perhaps the person has limited opportunities for redeployment. And so each case really will be handled differently as opposed to as a block, given that every employee situation will be different. So layoff is always the last resort. And as has been explained in our pandemic plan, every effort will be made to ensure that our employees are well seen to. And so what we've put in place is a process that allows us to say, okay, can you take your vacation? Let's do this first. Let's go step by step to ensure we keep our employees whole for as long as we can. Now, let's be realistic. If you've seen and paid attention to what Grant has said, there is a worst case scenario that we also must plan for. And that significant scenario, if, for instance, we cannot come back for whatever reason face-to-face by winter, really becomes a stark scenario for the college, not just for us, but for the whole college system. And that's something that we need to plan for. So as part of our workforce plans, of course, layoffs are also needing to be considered depending on how far this pandemic lasts going forward.
Very good there. Thank you so much. All right, next question. Considering that most students have paid for spring and now have had their term canceled, will they be receiving a full refund or have that money on hold for future semesters? Is that a Laura question?
Yes, and Chris may want to jump in at the end of this. First, I want to clarify that actually the majority of our students enrolled for spring can continue on through complete online delivery. And Chris may want to speak to that afterwards. However, if there is a program that we cannot offer, then yes, the student will get a refund. I also want to mention that for those students who will be completing their studies completely online in the spring term, they will pay their full tuition because they will be receiving the full part of their learning credential, for lack of better words. But they'll be we will be fulfilling our learning outcome obligations, for example. However, they will not be charged for certain compulsory ancillary fees that are tied to on-campus experiences or certain program fees that would be tied to a face-to-face experience. So we are being very careful in ensuring that we are charging students correctly for the type of experiences that they are receiving and how it differs from a regular delivery of an academic term. So hope that answers the question.
And the only thing I'd add at the end of that is to reiterate that the final list of levels that will need to be suspended is being worked on, as I said, right at this moment.
All right, thank you both for that. Thinking probably about 2 more questions here, and then we have to turn our attention to some final thoughts from Claude, and then I'll close. Next question. Can we donate to the emergency fund for students? Mark or Laura?
Sure, Ron, thank you.
Mark, yep.
And thank you, Duncan, for that question and for your very generous spirit, appreciating that many members of our community are going through challenging and difficult times on their own. In short, we've had many members of our community reach out and ask that question, and the short answer is yes, absolutely. We have set up an online donation page. So what I will do is send out the link for that in the chat. And it is available if you're on the Algonquin College main homepage to click on Alumni or Give. That'll direct you to our online giving form. So thank you for the question and for your generosity.
All right, another question, perhaps the last one here. Many partial load professors do not have a contract, but do have a verbal offer. When will Workday contracts come out? Could the delay affect benefits? We'll kick that over to HR.
Maureen, could you respond to that, please?
Yes, we're aware that through Dr. Jansen's area, they are working on the academic continuity plan that is looking at what courses are going, the timelines, and what offers are being made. So as soon as they have that information and the deans and the chairs are in a position to extend out offers through Workday, that contract will come out through the Workday system. Unfortunately, with respect to benefits, we cannot trigger benefits on a verbal offer. We will have to wait until the proper documentation is done through Workday. As soon as the Workday contract comes out, there is an automatic link for the individual to access benefits associated through that. The employee has 31 days to access and request the benefits, and it would be retroactive to the date of the contract start.
All right, thank you. So I just did a quick tally of the remaining questions, and there's approximately, plus or minus anyway, about 19 questions that we're not able to get to. The meeting is supposed to end at 4 o'clock, and at 3:55, we turn our minds to closing and final remarks. I will ask one more very important question here, and it says, due to the physical closure of the campus, we're very concerned about the dog squad. Could Claude and Tracy please give us an update on Seamus and Monty?
That is so funny. Well, happy to note that Seamus is doing extremely well. He's enjoying the fact that I'm at home all the time and relishing in this. What I will say, I've got a picture here to show you. Hopefully I'll be able to get to it in the jiffy here. I've learned, here we go. This is, hopefully you'll be able to see this. This is a new skill that I've learned during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is to groom my own puppies. So they've been very patient with me, and they've survived the experiment so far.
Very good, Tracy.
Well, Monty is basking in all of this attention he's getting at home for sure. He's very needy and he's very lazy. I think he's getting fat, but what can you do? He's doing great. And we actually just posted something to the Dog Squad Twitter page of him digging in the dirt on the weekend. He had a great time. So you'll see him on campus soon enough when we're all back.
All right, full transparency, that question wasn't actually in the chat box, but I thought that, well, I was curious.
You were curious.
So with that, Claude, I'd like to offer you the floor for any final thoughts.
Thank you. Folks, these events, this situation, I will qualify as life-changing. It will be life-changing for our generation. And we keep talking about a new normal. We will emerge from this. I mean, we've seen other life-changing events in the history of the world. We will emerge from this. We'll emerge better as a college community. We will emerge stronger and more together as a community. And for that, we need all of you to continue to do the fantastic and great work that you've been doing. And it takes us back full circle to the Indigenous story that Ron told us at the very beginning, which is so apropos for the times that we're living through. Let's take those stories and embrace them and go through this process with that in mind, that there is light at the end of this tunnel, and that we will emerge stronger together. And I really want to thank our audience for the way you've engaged today. Clearly different than how we would normally do when we would have a live town hall, but you've been wonderful. Your questions have been thoughtfully posed, and we look forward to answering the rest of the ones that we didn't have time for this afternoon. I also want to thank the events team and our communications team for organizing this event, which was, in my view, terrifically well handled. I think that paves the way for future events of this nature during the pandemic, but also beyond the pandemic. And also for the communications team for all the great communication work that they've done so far during this, this crisis. And finally, I want to thank our panelists for their important information that you've conveyed and how you've answered the questions. So to everyone, from me and from the executive team, we wish that you stay well, your family stay well and healthy. Thank you.
If I might, Claude, before we sign off, just two, maybe three things. I did commit to Colin's question. You'll recall that he was unable to reconnect. And so I would like to meet that commitment if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if we can quickly bring that question back up, but it had to do with whether or not there was, oh, okay, thank you so much. I just gotta move a few windows around here, stand by. Have there been any confirmed cases of COVID-19 with the Algonquin College community, staff, or students? In Colin's absence, as he was unable to reconnect, Dwayne has offered to answer this question. Dwayne, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ron. So the answer is no. We have no information about any confirmed cases of COVID-19 from within the college community. And we would not necessarily have information about someone who may have contracted COVID-19 in the broader community. And this information would not necessarily be shared with us by public health for privacy reasons, unless there were a need for contact tracing on campus.
Great, thank you. In the community that I come from, when we do an opening, it is a cultural necessity that we do a closing. I didn't do an opening today in the language, so I don't feel the need to do that in the language. In addition, I don't have the linguistic ability to do a closing in the language. But what I will say is that you know, I get to spend a lot of time at the executive table with my peers, and in a lot of that time, I'm learning. And one of the things that I was reminded about this week was I was thinking about the inability for most people within the college community to sit at that meeting, sometimes for days at a time, but to hear the care, to hear the thinking, to hear the respect, to hear the dialogue that goes into the decision-making process that exists at that level. You know, it's a struggle sometimes to pursue a strong leadership voice and to be seen as strong leaders while also working to develop and promote consensus building. And so I want you to know that we spend quite a bit of time chasing, cultivating, and caring for a good mind for the benefit of the community. That includes our staff, our faculty, our students, and our stakeholders. And so we know that this is a difficult time. We know that this has been stressful on all of you. We also know that we have accomplished some really interesting things in the last, what has it been, 6-7 weeks already? Who would have thought that we would be able to turn an institution the size of Algonquin on a dime and offer the amount of academic activity online? I think most people would agree that we would have considered that nearly impossible before. I know that as a North American culture, we would have also thought that working from home would be nearly impossible. The reason I share that thinking with you is because I would ask and challenge each of you to think about these artificial structures, these artificial barriers that we have constructed all around us in order to accomplish any number of things. But the reason I say that is because we have a really unique and generational opportunity to benefit from having our minds shaken. How do we go back to normal? What is normal? Do we shoehorn ourselves back into a previously way of existing simply because it was familiar? Was it working? Did it feel good? What from this experience do we not want to put down? What from this experience can we carry with us as we move forward? I'm excited to commit to work with the leadership team, a small group of the Coalition of the Willing, enhanced and supported by the AC Way folks, to do a pilot project where we begin thinking about how we become again. In the Cayuga language, Jidwado means we become again. If you look outside and the big sleep is over and our mother's waking up, she's getting ready to become again. I would suggest to each and every one of you that if we didn't take this generationally unique opportunity to change the way we think, the way we organize, the way we interact, the way we relate, then it's an incredibly strong and incredibly powerful missed opportunity to do exactly that, to Jidwado, to become again. So with that, I'd just like to thank all of you and all of the people, way too many to name, that have put a lot of, I don't want to say blood, but sweat and tears and laughter and stress. And I don't know, I had a hair patch here yesterday that I pulled out. And, and I just want to acknowledge that with humor and support and caring and love, we'll get through this. But I think we have a true opportunity to become again. And I think that Algonquin College is up to the task to do that. So with that, we'll close off today's town hall, an unprecedented amount of online activity. Thank you all so much for your contributions, your caring, and all of the good-mindedness you put into your work. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.